Hi, I'm Lisa Haisha. I'm a life coach, author, educator, filmmaker, and avid traveler. And I've dedicated my life to helping people find their passion and purpose. I have always been fascinated by human nature, by ordinary and unconventional soul seekers on a spiritual path who are dedicated to service. I've talked with people in different cultures all over the world for insights, from the Dalai Lama in India, to Bedouins in the Middle East, shamans in Peru, to movers and shakers in Hollywood. Every sage throughout history will tell you that meaningful change comes from within. So I decided to check in with a few renowned thought leaders whose sole purpose in life is to help us manifest that change. They have key insights to offer about how to transform adversity into opportunity and step into who we truly are so that we thrive, not just survive. And I asked them a lot of questions. How do we get out of our comfort zones to optimize our health? Can only 4 key questions guide us through every challenge in life? What's the best way to practice forgiveness and consciously uncouple? And perhaps the biggest mystery of all, is there an afterlife? And if so, what's it like? If you're interested in these answers, then join me as we explore these questions and many more in SoulBlaze Your Life. Death is a big subject, but what happens after we die is an even bigger one. I've traveled all over the world and seen how death has been both celebrated and mourned, even revered. I visited the suicide forest in Japan, where people commit suicide with dignity. I've traveled to war-torn Iraq, my father's homeland, where death was always right around the corner. And I spent time in the city of the dead in Cairo. But it wasn't until I experienced the death of loved ones that I started to really soul search. My closest friend was only in her 40s when she passed away from cancer. Then within the next decade, both my parents died. Religion and mysticism offered one set of answers about what happens on the other side. But there's another clue that comes to us by way of people who have had near-death experiences. A near-death experience, also known as an NDE, is a profound out-of-body experience, which often happens to people in the context of a life-threatening event. In this altered state of consciousness, people have profound mystical experiences that seem to offer clues to one of the greatest existential questions of all time. People have been documenting NDEs for centuries. Most recently, Anita Moorjani's story made big headlines. Anita is a remarkable woman who in 2002 was diagnosed with lymphoma. 4 years later, her body was ravaged by cancer and on the brink of death. 30 hours into a coma, doctors were about to pronounce her dead. That's when Anita had an incredible NDE that changed her life forever and brought her powerful insights, not just about death, but about life and the afterlife. She wrote about these insights in her best-selling book, Dying to Be Me. Like many people, I was brought up with the traditional Christian paradigm about heaven and hell. And I wondered what Anita Moorjani's NDE taught her about that paradigm. So we talked about heaven and hell and what it feels like to be a human being having a spiritual experience. So what is it like when we talk about the religious paradigm? You're going to hell or heaven. When you died, was there a hell in heaven? Did you meet God with a beard, this old man? What did you see?
When I died, I realized that God isn't a being, but God is a state of being.
So was there a group of people greeting you, hello, welcome to heaven, or welcome to the afterlife? What was it like? Was it a feeling or was it?
So I saw, felt, knew that I was surrounded by a group of entities, but they loved me. They absolutely
but not in
loved
human form.
Not in human form. They were in spirit form.
Okay.
and they loved me. There was no judgment whatsoever. None, not even an iota.
So if you have a friend or a family member who did kill themselves and you're thinking, oh my God, they're burning in hell, that is not the case.
That is not the case.
Okay.
There was no heaven, no hell. When I say no heaven, no hell, I mean, if I had to label it one or the other, I would call it heaven, because it was beautiful, loving, nirvana. I felt so joyful. I felt so free. All the earthly pressures and everything was just gone. The judgments, the shame I had felt, all of that was gone. I left it all of it gets left behind, because our souls are actually a bigger part of who we are. So what I realized when I was on the other side is that my soul was huge and powerful, much more powerful than this physical body. But I had spent my life thinking that who I was this physical body. And this body was dying, and I felt trapped, and I felt angry, and I felt fearful. But who I actually am is someone much greater than this physical body. All you're seeing when you look at someone is 10% of who they are. There is so much more that is non-physical. The reason we get depressed is because we've forgotten that 90%. We've neglected it. We've ignored it. But that 90% is there trying to express itself through this 10%, which is the physical. And when you don't allow it, when you don't even acknowledge that it exists, then that's how it leads to a disconnection with yourself, your soul, your purpose. So I actually feel that when we came into this life, we came with this purpose of expressing that soul through this body. But somewhere along the way, we get lost. And if we allow ourselves to stay lost, that's when we start to feel depressed, because our soul is crying out to be expressed.
That's what I think is so brilliant about your work, is you're really focusing on soul work, because our soul needs so much attention, and people just say, oh, let me just go to the gym and pump iron. It's not about that.
A lot of people today are really into trying to eat healthy. You know, we're into the juicing, celery juice, and we have to eat this and we have to take the supplements. And I always tell people, go ahead and do that, but do it from a place of loving your life, loving your body, wanting to live long, not from the place of, oh my God, I have to avoid cancer, I have to avoid illness. If I don't take this, if I don't do this, I'm going to get cancer. So the person I used to be before I even had cancer was somebody who was so afraid of getting cancer that I used to order all these supplements online, but it was all from the perspective of, I have to do this because I don't want cancer.
When we're talking about depression and all this and getting all these diseases and all the fear of you must go to church or you must go to temple or whatever, the mosque, or you're a bad person.
Yeah, I grew up with all of that, the fear of religion. I grew up thinking that everything I did, I had to do it so that to prevent a negative afterlife. So I guess in Western culture, it's a fear of hell. In my culture, it was a fear of bad karma and reincarnating into a bad situation. So I grew up with that fear. And so I was always super careful about only creating good karma. I was so careful about always being of service.
So what does creating good karma mean to you? Does that mean losing yourself and always being a giver?
Yes. And it means...
Which causes depression.
Which causes depression.
You don't know who you are and you're living a false life.
Yes,
right?
you end up living a false life. And so you're living a hellish life to ensure that you're not going to create hell in the afterlife.
Right.
So you end up living this hellish life where you're always just thinking of serving and giving and never following your own passion or your own dream. And I used to even believe that if I had desires, that was my ego. It was more heroic to suppress my desires and to be of service. Everything was about creating karma, positive karma, so the next life would be amazing.
Isn't that interesting? Focusing so much of this life on the afterlife?
Yes, it's crazy. And I'm sure many religions do that. But when I died, I realized I was supposed to focus on this life, that this life can be heaven if I lost the fear My only job is to make this life joyful and make this life into heaven, and everything else to do with the afterlife will take care of itself. But heaven and hell is created right here in this life. In the afterlife, you actually get to reflect back on this life, but you're not going to be punished. Like if you have been suffering this life, you're not going to be punished after, like let's say somebody is suffering a lot and that's why they commit suicide. It's a very difficult decision to make to end your life.
Right.
Extremely
Usually
difficult.
It takes people a long time to actually do it.
Yeah, and they have to be suffering a lot.
Yes.
It would be a cruel joke if they crossed over and suffered some more. No, it's not like
So what happens to them?
They are met with love. And then they get to evaluate their lives, and they get to kind of evaluate and understand why they got into that situation. What happened with me when I crossed over, I even understood how it was that the cancer came to be. I understood how every thought and decision and the fear I was living in and the hellish life that I had created had caused my body to even become so depleted that I ended up getting an illness. I could see how it had all happened.
Did you see past lives that you've lived in?
I did. I was only able to see the lives that were relevant.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that were relevant to this life. My relationship with my dad was really turbulent because I never met his expectations of what an Indian woman should be. But when I crossed over, he was there on the other side. And all I felt from him was pure unconditional love. If we think of our lives as a tapestry,
yes,
and each of us is a thread in the tapestry. So if you think of a beautiful and complex picture, and let's say it's a huge picture and you can see trees and waterfalls and all kinds of things in this tapestry, and birds and mountains. And if you get really close to the tapestry, you see that the tapestry is made of these beautiful, colorful silk threads all woven together to create this beautiful picture. Now imagine if you realized that each of those silk threads represented a person's life. That's the analogy I use for when I was on the other side and I could see the trajectory of my life. Because I was outside of my life, it was like I could see the whole tapestry, the whole picture made sense because I was standing on the outside so I could see the whole tapestry. And so when you're that thread traveling through life, you are touching other threads. And then those threads are going on and touching other threads, which means touching other people. So what I saw was that if I didn't come back, my thread wouldn't continue. It would break at that point. And if it broke at that point, it wouldn't touch those people that I had yet to touch, who would go on to touch other people. What I saw was that everything I had done in my life had an effect on that tapestry to create this perfect picture. Everything is actually perfect when you're outside of it and you see the whole picture.
Yes. Amen. Namaste. That's brilliant. So wonderful. This is going to help so many people. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
When Anita had her NDE, the universe finally made sense to her. She not only understood why she had cancer, but she also understood a few key insights that we should all keep in mind. God isn't a being, but a state of being. There's nothing to fear in life or in the afterlife. We are so much greater than our physical bodies. We are spiritual beings having a human experience and not the other way around. We are all connected, and no, I'm not talking about the internet. Love is truly a supreme force in the universe. Above all, there's one message that I really love that Anita has to offer. We don't realize that we are actually perfect just the way we are. We are born perfect, but spend a lifetime trying to be something we're not, and then feel inadequate for failing. Your only purpose is to be yourself. Otherwise, you'll deprive the universe of who you came here to be. Imagine what your life would be right now in this body you currently inhabit if you lived with that message always in mind. It's never too late, my friends.